Welcome into the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball on the podcast on the KSR Podcast Network. Left out of line there. Presented by Club Blue. Club Blue is the official collective partner of the University of Kentucky. I am your host, as always, Jack Pilgrim of Kentucky Sports Radio, with a brand new face. I am thrilled. Kyle Mann of The Ringer, one of the most brilliant basketball minds, a savant. You may
stop it right now. I'm gonna stop you. Don't do that. Don't do that to me, Jack. Don't
Kyle,
say that stuff.
It's an honor. It's having a friend as smart as you are. I don't feel like we're on the same levels. Like, you're way more popular and famous than I am. So just having you on this show is a weird dynamic. Like, how we go play pickup basketball and just do normal like life things doesn't feel very right, because you're a big deal. And it's an honor to have you on the show and do big deal things with our little old show. So thank you for doing this.
Well, that's very sweet of you to say. I have the scouting report on. I saw our buddy Big Blue Drew was talking, pickup hoops. I have Jack's scouting report. If any of you guys ever want it, I feel like I have a good handle for his role and what he plays like. But
is it just Grant Williams? Like, 'cause I get that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you're a solid. You throw your weight around. I mean, you get in there and you play physically. I before we get started, I rarely get these opportunities. Sometimes I'll get the itch. I don't really get outlets to talk with like other people who are interested in Kentucky. I try to keep my specific nerdy Kentucky stuff into like one specific thread on Twitter to not flood people. But it's like the worst kept. It's not even. Everybody knows it's like a bit at this point. K is for Kyle and Kentucky. He's a Kentucky guy. Everybody's like, "Oh, you're from Kentucky? No shit, Kyle." I brought some artifacts that I wanted to show you guys.
Yes.
I have some things. I rarely ever get to show these off. I keep hearing people say this one isn't as old, but I have one of the Oneness 2012 illustrated shirts. I thought about selling it. I got it when I was a lot thinner. I can't wear it anymore. It would basically look like a tattoo if I put it on at this point, but that's a cool shirt.
It's stunning. I don't think I've seen that.
You've never seen that?
I don't think so.
Huh. Well, I think it was a limited run for sure. This is the other one. Okay. I've heard Drew talk about going to camps back in the day. Mm-hmm. Well, when Kentucky switched over from Converse to Nike, they cleared out. Bill Kitely switched. He just had this little table where he was just cleaning out the supply closet. It was incredible. And he had all this really cool Converse and Apex stuff. And one of the things that he had these.
Oh, baby.
And these belong to Walter McCarty. They had a tag in the back with a red number 40 on it, but it got dry rotted and it fell off. You can kind of see the nub where it is. But I looked at it. I don't know how many pairs he had of the away shorts, but he's wearing that color short in the picture where he hit the shot against LSU to take the lead. I, in my heart, want to believe that. I mean, the Walter McCarty thing, it got a little less cool lately, but these shorts are dear to me. I wore them. And then when I was out at BYU recently, they gave me this shirt, which was going to get printed. And they said after they got them printed up, Mark left like the next day. So I have a lot more Kentucky stuff. We can go through that another time. But I just wanted to legit check myself. And I got, my 94 or my 96 Final Four sweatshirt on. So there we go.
It's beautiful. We can just go through like all the memorabilia that we have in the office and stuff. It's very cool. I mean, just even like the backdrop. It's good. This is good. I'm glad we're getting this.
We're in good company.
Yeah, it's good. So I'm glad that we get you on here to nerd out a little bit about the Kentucky Wildcats, because you don't get to do that in a platform like this. I want you to just spit your game about just this team, what the roster construction looked like going into this year. You were present at a couple of the early practices and kind of got a first look at this group and how things have progressed, the early non-conference wins, stacking the quad ones, and then kind of getting to this point where they've plateaued a little bit with the injury bug biting them at the wrong time. And just as we're trending into the postseason, I'm just interested in digging and prying and picking at your brain a little bit, just to see what you think of this group based on day one expectations, seeing them from day one, some of those early practices you saw. So just we'll rewind a little bit. What were those early impressions of this group?
I mean, there were some things on paper that I think you could see from a little a ways away, as we say in these parts. There, I knew that we weren't going to have the dribble dancer kind of create your own guys like we did last year. Look at me, I'm already saying we on a podcast. I mean,
You need this. This is a vent session for you. This is therapy for yourself as well.
yeah, the Dillinghams, the Antonio Reeves, it's the self-creators. I think that kind of spirals and spins into another conversation about how this team creates offense and some other things about shots and the types of shots they produce that I want to talk to you based on some narratives that I hear from Kentucky fans. I've kind of alluded to you to this over text to you at times, but no, I mean, it's a team that if you consider, and Pope's gotten a lot of praise for this, obviously, for he assembled a team that was very meticulously put together. It's a team that very obviously and you see a lot of college basketball teams these days playing this way. It's a lot more, unless you have like an elite dribble, like pick and roll guy who can operate with the defense facing them and loading them up. Those guys, they're just not that common, and especially not at the college level. You're not going to see them like Trae Young is the last guy that I can think of that just played facing the basket in middle pick and roll for a whole team. Shea did it a lot too. We were lucky to have one in that sense. But this team, you see it more and more. Danny Hurley plays this way. Josh Schertz at Indiana State got a lot of credit for playing this way. A big who can facilitate and play in the middle of the floor with ball screen stuff, pin downs, double pin downs into dives to the basket, into pops. It's like it causes the defense to have to think a whole lot. And he built a team that was going to have a lot of uphill gravity. And when I say uphill gravity, not to be too jargony, but just guys that pull you away from the basket. Some teams are built, basketball for a long time was like get downhill, play out of the post, kick it out if there's extra help. This team plays uphill and then tries to punish you with back cuts, which has led to problems over the course of the season. So but overall, I think that this team has done about what I thought they would. Considering, of course, I didn't expect them to be without like 3 and in some cases 4 of their top 8 guys. But I think that the whiplash from, all respect to Calipari, I appreciate him. I think the whiplash from the level of preparation that was around the program in the past, I said whenever early in the season, I was like, it's going to be a dramatic night and day difference because Pope is just so obsessive as a preparer. And we're seeing that. And I'm very optimistic about it. If they can get healthy, I feel very good about them being able to beat anybody. They get up against a physical team in the first round. They could also lose to anybody, but I feel pretty good about their chances.
And we totally missed all of the foreplay with this. Totally. Who are you? Like we didn't even get to introduce you on this platform for those who may be unfamiliar. Brief summary of what your day-to-day life looks like with the Ringer and why you are such a big deal. And you don't have to be humble with that.
I'm not a big deal. I think I benefit from being under the incredible shadow of Bill Simmons, and I think everybody does. That's a tide that just rises all ships, and I'm totally aware of that. No, man. I mean, the really quick version of this is always was a basketball dork my whole life. Had some just weird career hiccups in my early 30s. Was left just kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. My wife was like, hey, you've never written about basketball. You should do that. So I started doing it for no one, literally for no one. I was doing it for myself. And I was like, maybe I'll make a video of one of these articles that I wrote. And distraction started. And I kind of turned around and looked behind me. And it was kind of like the Forrest Gump thing where he was like, some people were running with him. And I was like, what? And that was kind of and it started really small. And I just kind of kept pushing. And luckily, we got some attention, not long after that, and I started freelancing for the Ringer. And the quick version of it is that did us freelance for them for a year and then got brought on, and my life just kind of but for anybody that knew me, knew that it's kind of like, I was eaten up with it to the point where it was like, if you're going to talk to Kyle, you might as well talk about basketball. So in that sense, my life didn't change a whole lot. But day to day, I cover the draft mostly. It's shifted around here and there. I've been national NBA, but I've always been really keen on development, young players and charting them how they get better. So that's kind of what I cover at the Ringer. And luckily, my interests overlap at times with Kentucky.
Often, yes.
Like they will at the SEC tournament in a couple weeks. I get to go to that. And it just so happens that the team that I'm most interested in watching is going to be there. Yeah, so that's kind of what my life is like, Jack.
So you got to see a couple of those pretty important draft figures of this upcoming cycle early on. Kentucky stacking wins against the likes of Duke and Cooper Flagg and Con Knipple, and that was obviously a massive talking point for this team. But it kind of switching gears specifically to Kentucky, Did the early success surprise you at all based on what you saw with those early practices? Did them going to Atlanta and winning in the Champions Classic game, did that surprise you? And the Gonzagas and, some of those, stacking some of those early high profile wins, how did that, sit with you?
I mean, the Duke one, Malawach, having the cramps, I think is a big kind of underrated thing there. Duke was still, I think Kentucky was lucky to get that quad one win, which is just looking better and better all the time. I think they were not lucky. They were fortunate to catch Duke before they were, they have young players, but Sion James hadn't fully taken on the role on the team. They were still playing Caleb Foster a lot. So it was a quality win. It was great. But I think their ability to sort of gel quickly is sort of a byproduct, I think, of the intelligence in the players that Pope assembled. And I think that can't be, overstated, is that he did a really good job, like, accumulating guys that can adjust on the fly, that he can draw something up and be like, let's do this, and they can implement it seamlessly. These are guys that have been around college basketball for a while, and they can do these things. Now with like the Gonzaga thing, I think that ties to some of the zone conversations that we've had, where Pope kind of protected that knuckleball that he could throw out there, like at a perfect time, and it blindsided Gonzaga clearly. But you do what you got to do to get a win, and I think when you have a personnel like this, I think he's played it pretty smart in terms of like holding on to his aces when he really needs them. I think if they just go, we've seen that if they go zone all the time, that teams are going to be like, all right, we're going to prepare for that. So I don't know. We'll see what else. I don't know. What do you think the next kind of knuckleball is going to be for him, for this staff? I don't know how many more they have that would just completely disrupt a game the way that one did.
So much of that has to do with just like how much longer we will be without Jackson Robinson, Lamont Butler, and just, if they do kind of have to keep throwing these little wrenches in there, just kind of going with the news of the day. It is Colin Show. Mark Pope says that Jackson Robinson and Lamont Butler have both returned to practice, modified practice, but we're getting somewhere with both of them. What does that do here down the stretch? There's 4 games left in the regular season, and then obviously approaching SEC tournament play, NCAA tournament play. How much did the learning experience of having those guys out and having to figure out, obviously didn't win every game, but learning how to win without those guys, and then getting them both back going into the postseason, what does that kind of change for what this team can be going in the next couple weeks?
Well, I think the Butler loss is a lot harder. I said this on Twitter one day that, like, point of attack is huge, especially for a team that is as wispy and skinny, and they can, guys can drive. I always say, I kind of looked at this roster early in the year before they got going, and I was like, they're going to have a hard time with bigger, forwards that can handle, bigger bodied wings that can handle and get to the rim. They're just going to go through them. We saw that against Ole Miss. You see that it's Mississippi State. Matthews had that huge game. That's the exact archetype that I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And the comparison I made though was, when you have Lamont Butler there, you've got a mahogany door at the point of attack, and without him there, you've got a saloon door basically, and that puts a lot of stress on your entire defense. And Amari can only do so much. Amari is not a fireman in the way that an AD. Nobody's like AD. Or Nerlens, or even go on down the line, but it just puts a lot of stress on a team that already struggles to defend. So when you have Lamont there, you have that resistance, that extra bit of resistance that you need. I think they can sustain losing Jackson more than they can Lamont. But on the idea, I was saying this about the no, Matt G. Sorry, I had to bring up mahogany. I'm a random ass person. Sorry, guys. But when it comes to the young guys playing, this is my optimism, is that there's hypertrophy whenever you're lifting weights. Jack's a big swole fella. I'm sure he's familiar with this. When you strain a muscle to failure, it grows back stronger. And my hope with these young players who are not helpless when they're out there, Trenton O can knock down shots. Travis Perry, I think in a short time is going to be better than Kerr Kriisa. I think I said that to you. I think he might already be better than Kerr Kriisa, in my opinion.
Interesting. Yeah.
I think you get all the ball skills. I think he's more skilled, I think, overall than Kerr, and you get less of the like, why would you do that moments that we get with Kerr. Love him to death. But your hope is just that these guys, and Colin too, who we've seen come on, we hope that we've stressed them enough that they respond in a way where it's positive, where they grow back from that hypertrophy stronger. So that's kind of where I'm with the freshmen, and I can see that happening. The Garrison thing is a different conversation, but it's I think I've been very encouraged by Chandler and by Perry and by Noah.
Have they surprised you at all? Because there's just this running theme narrative going into the year that they were going to be a year away from being a year away, that like they were maybe breaking case of emergency, and here we are in the face of emergency, but that you didn't even think about the maybe Travis Perry coming in hitting a bang bang three every once in a while, but you just out of sight out of mind for all talking points with the season for how them being thrown in with the Sharks and how quickly they have navigated those waters. Does that surprise you at all?
Travis, I mean, like I said, their ability to stay on the floor has been driven by their kind of spatial feel, just kind of meaning they know where to go on the floor and win naturally already. So I think they picked up the offense quickly. But like earlier in the season, when I did get to see them practice even before the games, and I was just watching Travis play with them in scrimmages, I came away just being like, Travis is one of the more skilled players on the team. It's just the vehicle matters a lot. If Travis had Otega's vehicle, he'd be a lottery pick, but
yeah,
it's just that I kind of wondered if the speed and the pressure would affect Travis, and it has affected him, but you've watched him kind of adjust. I thought during the Texas game he looked like he had his legs under him more than he has so far. Trent has surprised me. Trent I thought would be, obviously the shooting, he's obviously worked a whole lot at that, but he's fearless. I think that's one of the big things about Trent is that he is absolutely, dude, Jack, I could never have played for Kentucky. I could barely play for my high school team. I got so nervous. I would get so anxious. I was talking to Cameron Mills about this, and I was like, how in the world? I couldn't do it, dude. I would get so nervous. And I honestly don't know how Travis and Trent do it, like being Kentucky kids.
Trent has just this and Ansley for a different reason, I think, because he just kind of has a clock ticking in his brain saying, hey, I only have X number of games, which means X number of shots to go in my career. I'm just going to let it fly every time I touch the ball. But Trent has just this MFer to him where I have never seen a dude just catch and shoot in a way with a level of confidence that I don't care if you are riding me like a backpack, I'm going to take this shot and I plan on making it. Maybe it doesn't fall, but I plan on making it. And I think that does carry so much weight, like you said, being here, just the confidence of this, the audacity of him to do some of the things that he does.
You said the word. You said the word.
Yeah.
Audacity. That's a key thing in this offense, is that you have to establish a baseline of this dude's crazy. Like, these dudes are crazy. You have to play that way because they play the Warriors side. I talked about the uphill with the cutting. The Warriors cut you to death and have so much success with it because you're like, they will shoot this bad shot. It doesn't, and I think people get frustrated, but I think Trent is setting himself up to really, really improve a lot within this offense because of what you're talking about, the audacity.
And I do think we're missing some of that. We missed the opportunity with Kerr because that's kind of been his thing. I wanted to see Pope kind of rein a little bit of that in with the erratic behavior and kind of, hoping to get a more sculpted version of Kerr Kriisa. And it's kind of been a shame that we haven't been able to see that process through. But you nailed it. I think to be here, you have to play with a certain level of confidence. And if you don't, sorry, you don't belong. Quick message from our friends at Club Blue, and then want to dig into the Amari Williams, kind of Brandon Garrison back and forth, because I know that's an extensive one. Club Blue is the official collective partner of the University of Kentucky. Club Blue was founded by UK fans strictly to support the NIL efforts at the University of Kentucky. Unlike most collectives, 100% of subscriber money and 100% of donor money goes directly to NIL. Club Blue charges no fees. Club Blue subscribers receive some amazing benefits like invitations, special events, meet and greets with UK athletes, signed merchandise, monthly giveaways, ticket giveaways, Club Blue merch, and more. Subscribe today at www.clubbluenil.com. You can pick which sport you want to support when you sign up. Choose your sport and support with Club Blue. Got some talk with Mark Pope tonight. Was asked about just hey, why don't you play Amari Williams longer? Feels like Kentucky is better when he is on the floor versus when he's not on the floor. And Mark was like, yes, you're right. When you have an all SEC big that isn't on the floor, you tend to play not as well. But then talked a lot about, I think, what the elephant in the room of this is when you have a 7 foot, 262-pound big that is easily fatigued. If you look back at his old numbers at Drexel, he does have a window, and it really has not steered far away from that window over the course of his 4-year career there. So how do you navigate that when you know that Brandon Garrison isn't giving you what you're probably needing in those spot minutes off the bench, while also kind of wanting to maximize the efficiency, as Mark Pope said very specifically, talking about the fatigue part tonight, saying like once he gets past the 28-ish minutes that he kind of falls off a cliff pretty quickly. How do you navigate that, do you think, Kyle?
I mean, I'm trying to look back, and his foul efficiency at Drexel was really good. So you kind of look back and wonder, like, what is it about him? And I think, what is it about him that is falling off of a cliff whenever he's playing for too long? I'm not going to act like I crushed a ton of Amari Williams tape at Drexel, because you look at a guy his size, and you and I have been, we've gotten to stand near him. His shoulders and arms are, I can't, I'm trying to think of how many Kentucky players are on that level physically. Like a Bam, I mean,
Oscar.
I think he's broader than Oscar even.
But just, wingspan and just having the kind of larger than life Herculean body. I don't think that the list is very short, clearly.
I think it's Bam. That's the only other person that I can, and it's interesting. He is kind of playing a Bam role in this team, on this team. Yeah. I've been really impressed over the course of the year. At the beginning of the year, I mean, I was getting frustrated because I think I was talking about this with somebody the other day. I think he's gotten a lot smarter about when to keep it, picking his keepers, within the offense. It's sort of the tuck the ball football thing and fake it and run. He's gotten a lot smarter about that. And I think we've seen a lot fewer of those just kind of blind left-handed hand grenades that he was throwing earlier in the year. You see him rooting out near the basket and kind of getting guys in the air. And Pope was good at that stuff. Pope's great at teaching that stuff and has a lot of experience with that. I'm sure that they've worked with him on that. In terms of like how you handle it, man, I mean, what choice do you have? We've seen what happens when Garrison is out there for extended minutes. I just think there is a feel drop off that is really substantial with Brandon. Brandon picking his spots like in transition. He just doesn't seem to have a good sense for when to go look for his own. If he's shown some ability to like catch lobs, things like that. It's just, you don't see as much situational feel from him in the way that you do from Amari over the course of the year. Amari has slowly figured things out in the SEC, but Brandon, if he posts it up, and I was afraid of this because this is the way that he played at Oklahoma State. It's just, man, when he posts up and he goes to that baby hook, it's Sandy Lyle and Along Came Polly, man. That thing is a rocket coming off the backboard. It's just there's just not a ton of touch. But earlier in the year, I don't know if it's a confidence thing either with him. I know with the staff, they've had to sort of like rein him in and keep him focused, from what I understand, and that's sort of been an ongoing thing. And maybe it's going to be a maturity thing. I don't know. I haven't talked to him directly, but I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it's tough. I do get the sense, and I wonder how much of it is Amari thriving and kind of becoming himself as like, hey, that's a clear all SEC guy, and Brandon like having I don't want to get left behind. I kind of came in as the high potential. I'm going to find my groove, and I'm kind of staying at this level while Amari's just kind of continues to trend upward. How much of that is a maturity deal with Brandon where he's like, well, I want to get mine too. Because you do kind of get those situational things where, that coast to coast against Alabama where he gets the rebound and he said, well, Amari just did this, so why can't I? And you do kind of have to learn when to say, whoa, hey, that's you got too much dip on your chip for right now. Like maybe someday, but not right now. I do wonder how much of that is just kind of seeing Amari's trajectory and wanting to follow suit. I don't know.
Wanting to connect A to B, but not knowing how to do it. He on that play in particular, you just saw him. He like went away. He like avoided contact too, which I was like, create the contact, which this whole team really doesn't enjoy doing that. But I just, I don't know, man. I think that you just roll the dice with Amari's production hypothetically going down, because I think the opposite has proven itself. But Pope is also playing this game of like he doesn't want to lose Brandon, because when Brandon is good Brandon, not bad Brandon, he can offer you something. So, but I don't know. I'm not sure how you balance it, man. I'm really
so the quote that Pope gave tonight, as he gets stretched and stretched and stretched, you start to see cracks with what he's able to do energy wise. We saw some of that with the mistakes leaning into fatigue late in the game. He's operating at his very best when he's in that space. He's most efficient and most effective and most impactful when he can be in that 20 to 28 minutes, and that's a real stretch for any guy his size. So I don't know. How do you, as a draft guy, kind of navigate those Brandon Garrison waters, knowing that like they clearly brought him in to be knowing, just talking to the people around the program, that it's kind of on a 2-year plan. Hey, we're going to let Amari run the ship, be the guy year one, and then we want you to be in a place where you're in position to take over that role in year 2. But it doesn't feel like we're necessarily getting that climb for him to take over that role. And like, I don't feel a sense of comfort as things stand today. Maybe he blossoms in SEC tournament play and, going to the NCAA tournament, maybe. But it just doesn't feel like necessarily he's ready to carry such a role the way Amari did, and knowing just how important the 5 spot is for him. So how do you navigate that as a draft guy, knowing that like he clearly has a high ceiling, but how long is it going to take to get there before you have to get current production right now?
Well, I mean, the ugly truth about this is that the buy-in price, in terms of like your ability to the speed at which you can think the game in the NBA, the buy-in price for that right now is just higher than it's ever been, and it's just going to get higher. And I think that the flow of information, the way that Kentucky operates, is a good sort of simulation of that. So, if we're talking NBA draft, I mean, I'm just being brutally honest, that doesn't project well. Big guys need to be able to process, they need to not have mental mistakes. They need to be able to see the floor and make quick reads and have low mistake kind of thing. And the other thing is that he's, for his position, he's not super big. You're going to be playing against guys like Clint Capella or, Nick Claxton, these guys who are big and have ball skills and are fast. And that's a challenge, man. You have to, if he were like an elite lob catcher, or he had some elite skill that was to just kind of cover some of those things, you would feel a little bit better about it. But on the NBA front, yeah, I mean, it doesn't bode super well. Now, it doesn't mean that he can't improve. Earlier in the season, the defensive stuff I thought on ball was pretty eye opening. I mean, like, he blocked a 3 against, I think it was against Duke, and you like the way he's mobile, but the bot, like, again, it's the hardware and the software, the body and the brain have to go together. There are plenty of guys who have great hardware, but the software just not quite there, and vice versa. So, barring like a huge improvement, I think he's going to have to make some significant progress in that area, based on the conversations I've had too.
On the flip side, why is Amari not a draft guy? Like, if I feel like he's gotten to the point now where obviously shooting is a non-starter, and that might just be the simple answer, but why is he not brought up for the processing, the software and hardware, as you put it? Feels like he kind of has everything but shooting. If you're looking for, and obviously not playing more than 20 minutes is an issue, but I feel like that's something that NBA teams would rather take a chance on, that, knowing he kind of has all the other stuff.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because that conversation has shifted lately. It really has. I mean, if you look at the style that we're talking about is so, it's all over the place in the NBA. Bigs that can guard multiple positions, got bigs that can roll and pass the ball and things like that. And Amari is off the charts in those areas. I think that he's proven over the past month and a half that he's going to get a shot with somebody. It's very possible that he could be a 2nd-round pick at this point, in my opinion. It might be a later. I could see him in that 45 to 60 range. But the point I made to somebody the other day is, Oso Ighodaro, a guy who played in a very similar offense for Marquette, who Amari is bigger and stronger than, and might be a better passer than, honestly, who was offensively challenged, has stuck his, we'll see how much he sucks and Stucks are on the brain, because the Phoenix Suns suck, and that's who he plays for. But he's stuck with them, and if he's an NBA player, I absolutely think that Amari is going to get a chance. It's hard, because Amari, like, he doesn't fly around, like I said, and like put out fires and wow you. But in between the top of the key and about the 8 to 10 foot range, he moves really, really well for somebody his size, and he can dribble on offense and attack other bigs. So if he improves as a finisher, the passing is there. I think he's going to get a shot, man. He's got a great body and a great mind.
I guess while we're talking about draft stuff, we're really just all over the place. But hey, that's conversation with how this is how I imagine, like, just if we're sitting down at a salsaritas or something and just having a conversation. This is how, like, hey, what do you think about this? Oh, by the way, I want to pick your brain about this. Otega is an interesting one where obviously this is probably the worst time to have this conversation because he just had his worst game as a Wildcat. But how do you kind of navigate the draft thing? Is his thing just as simple as shooting? I know playmaking leaves a lot to be desired, but physically, very, very gifted, obviously, and as productive as anybody in the SEC this year. Does he have a real decision to make, or should he be one of those, cash in on whatever NIL prize he could get this upcoming season, hopefully back with Kentucky? I would assume it'd be back with Kentucky. I know that relationship's very positive, but is he a high NIL cash out on college as long as possible, or do you see him as a real draft guy?
I would come back if I were him, honestly. You spoke to it. I mean, if he were elite defensively, like containing the ball, I would see it. The shooting, I think they're going to dare him to shoot. And the finishing, I think, is another thing. He does obviously get to the line, but 62.6% from the at the rim this year. If he was a little bit better of a finisher, like you said, there's really not much guys that don't. Assist to usage is one of my favorite stats. It just it's a gauge of IQ and feel for a lot of times, like ability to get off the ball. He's not quite there yet. So if you see if you think about what kind of role he's going to play, he's probably going to have to guard the ball in the NBA because I don't see him being super switchable. I would come back if I was Otega. There's really no reason not to come back and make some more money, display some more of those things that you want to display, and you can start to kind of move into maybe a second round conversation. But other people are higher on him than I am, but I would come back if I were Otega.
I guess if you can.
Are you in that camp? Are you higher on him as a pro than I am?
No, and it's honestly game by game. We've seen him have moments where you're like, how is that guy not a pro? And then there are games like we just saw where it's like that guy clearly needs another year. And it's not as simple, just the counting stats. I do think a lot of it is, ball pressure and some of the things that, when he's super engaged defensively and, has shown some of those spurts of, on the defensive end, you go, there it is. But then, the focus and engagement have been real problematic at times. So definitely a guy that, and I think Kentucky is, if you're Kentucky, you don't want to root for a kid's failure, obviously, but like he's in such a position where it's like, man, it would be super beneficial for him to kind of clean up some of those things. He has blossomed in a way I think that he personally wanted to in his own career, but to maybe polish a lot of those things up for one last hurrah next year as a senior, I think it's a very beneficial relationship for both sides. And I've talking to people close to Otega, I know he's loving his time here. I think he believes he's being extremely well coached and growing and developing the way he kind of wanted to at the rate that he wanted to. So I think it is a really positive relationship for both sides. And I just, how does that factor in, Kyle, for next season when we do talk about roster construction? We kind of shift the conversation there. When you have such an anchoring piece like an Otega, how do you kind of navigate that as you kind of put the puzzle pieces around him, knowing, that's a guy that they're clearly going to build around?
Well, we can kind of take a broader kind of step back look at this roster, and like when I look at what they're going to need, I do expect Otega to improve because I kind of would bet on him as a person just based on everything that I've heard him. He's ahead of schedule, and I don't think that it should be seen. I'm not accusing anybody of this, but I don't think it should be seen as like disappointing or like screw you, man. You don't think our guy's an NBA guy? It's like he's ahead of what people thought. So I think that's a positive in and of itself. But if you're looking at this group next year, I definitely think that they're going to have to supplement the issues that are going right now. I think they're going to be even more defensively challenged next year if they don't really get in the portal and go after those types of guys. I don't know if there's another Lamont out there. There are some other. I need to get in the stat trackers and kind of dig around to see if there's somebody that makes sense for them in that way. But I think that. They're going to have to really make an effort to, based on the pieces that are coming back, I think try to find some athleticism at that 3-4 spot if they can, guys that can like disrupt and rebound above their their position. And then I think they're going to have to find some more ball pressure guys. The problem is that those guys are insanely valuable. It's really hard, and those guys are going to cost the most in the portal, which brings up another aspect of this conversation, as I'm sure you're ready to talk about.
So when you're in Mark Pope's shoes and you talk about what you just addressed, and you have kind of just this weight on your shoulder of, we've won the big games, probably exceeding expectations that most had about how fast, how quickly successful he could be at a high level as, one of, continuing the blue blood status. He's checked a lot of boxes, but one that he still has yet to check is the high school big fish. Just, hey, can you recruit at a level at Kentucky? And that conversation, and when you talk about the Caleb Wilsons and you talk about the Nate Immense and you talk about the hey, I just got to land my guy, how important is that when discussing roster construction? And would you put forth the resources, the financial resources necessary to get one of those guys, or would you rather get 2 or 3 even of the best portal guys? Because I'm under the belief that he will be able to pick and choose whoever he wants out of the portal this upcoming cycle.
You just kind of have to look at what's available and what's realistic. In terms of 18-year-old, 17, 18, 19-year-old kids coming into college, its defense on the ball is really difficult, and in all facets. I mean, so would I be like leaning on a high school kid for that specific need based on what they already have? No, I don't think so, because I think Caden, I think Jasper are going to have an adjustment period defensively next year. And then you already add to the fact that Perry, who we expect to be playing, Trent Noah, who we expect to be playing, those guys are going to have to, it's always going to be a push for them to stay above water defensively. Their offense helps that. But I think that for me, I'd be looking to solve that problem in the portal. In terms of like the ball skills, if you're specifically, I know you're alluding to like a Nate Ament type guy, like who can probably slide into that guy who's interchangeable, who can guard some bigs, but also can step out on the floor and have some ball skills. I mean, Nate Ament is, really talented in terms of like talent and outbursts that he'll potentially have next year. He's going to be an upgrade from Carr in terms of, his physicality and knowing the college game. I mean, there's a trade-off there, but by the end of the year, he might be better than Carr. Who knows? We'll see. He's very, very talented, but man, I don't know. It's tough because there are some other guys in the portal that I like a lot. I mentioned to you, there's a guy Jackson Money at North Dakota. I can't remember if it's North Dakota or North Dakota State, but he's going to be a junior next year. It's these guys who are second round ish picks who could make good guaranteed money next year. And there are a lot of these high major programs are coming to them. And I've heard this directly from some people who do this. They're saying, come on our ship for a year, become more of a solidified first round pick with this guaranteed money. We will help you do that on a bigger stage against bigger competition. And he's one of those guys. Another one, JT Tompin, you've heard about, talked a lot about. Another guy that I hope that they target is Yaxel Lindeborg at UAB. And if you guys don't know who that is, go look him up. Do you want to comment on him?
I do. And it just looking at Twitter follows might be worthwhile. Being honest, but yeah, that is definitely one that has come up.
What's his number?
In terms of,
is it over 1,000?
I don't get what you're saying.
Oh, his Twitter followers. Yeah.
No, I'm saying the who, not
who he follows,
not quantity.
Is he
quality?
Okay, I see.
Yeah. And it's kind of obviously a tricky thing when a kid's not in the portal, but like you just hear at this time, like there are
follow. Let me see.
No, or who is following him maybe of interest, but it's just one of those deals that it's always a tricky conversation whenever like, hey, there is still a season going on right now, but like you always have to prepare in advance for that conversation to happen at some point. They're not happening now, but they have to happen at some point, and you have to have your ducks in a row to prepare for that. How much do you think Lamont having a career year, Amari having a career year, Jackson expanding beyond being just a catch and shoot 3-point threat, like the things that they came to Kentucky to be, to grow their game and hopefully just get in the conversation. Like Andrew Carr, is he a surefire pro? Probably not, but like to grow in certain aspects of his game to give them a better chance. How much do you think that is going to help Mark Pope this upcoming cycle to be able to, some of the names that we're talking about, to be able to like, hey, I want to follow in Amari's footsteps. I want to follow in Lamont's footsteps, and kind of recreate some of the magic that the best versions of these. Otega Oweh is the perfect example. A guy who wasn't even close to a draft board last season is now in the conversation because of this productivity in the SEC.
I mean, you'd have to be like you and I were talking about off the show here, that like in terms of like obviously fun brand of basketball, that this also would be on the top line of the basketball optometry chart, Jack. I think this is like no duh. If you're looking at this and you don't see a fun style when this thing's humming, man, I mean, you get to shoot a lot of threes. There's no like, hey, why'd you shoot that at this time in the shot clock? It's wild, it's free, it's modern. It's the way they play in the NBA in transition. If you got a wide open three, you take it. There's an audacity that's really fun. But I also think that, like I told you, I think you don't have to really dig deep or reach to think about how this is applicable to the way the NBA plays. So I think on that front, it's very obvious. And the money's going to be good. I think that's what it's going to come down to a lot of time. It's like, and we've seen how money can change. Like I mentioned BYU earlier, it's radically changed their situation. So you can, throw the money first and then sell people on it. But I mean, yeah, I think it's like it's a grand slam easy thing to sell. Mark is not going in there having to like spend, a lot of time getting creative with his wording or anything like that. This team is just so fun to watch when it's humming. Look, it's just kind of, the problem also is that they're competing against other schools that play a fun style also. Like in conference, Alabama, Florida, a lot of these places are going to be able to sell similar things.
Is there a bargain price that Pope will be, knowing some of the numbers behind the scenes of what they had to pay to get some of the guys on this roster? And I think from an unproven standpoint, like, hey, I'm taking a chance with my career by following you to BYU, or coming in or from BYU to Kentucky, or from elsewhere to Kentucky. There's a risk factor there that avoiding that, having the proven year of like, hey, we've won at the highest level in the SEC. We'll see what happens with the postseason. But like, how much of that can turn into a bargain, and how much of that in turn changes the conversation with, hey, if I could get a guy that did cost me 1.5 this past cycle, if I could get him now the same quality of player for 1 versus spending 3 on an 18-year-old high schooler, how much does that change the conversation in your opinion?
I mean, wait, are you asking me? You're asking me if they are going to want to like go cheaper now because of the proven? Do you think they have leverage? Is what you're saying?
You can get the same quality of a Lamont or a Jackson or an Andrew for cheaper now. Potentially, like I'm asking, like, do you think that they will come at more of a discount because of the proven sample of a full season of success?
It's so attractive that people are right. Gonna,
right. Yeah. There's going to be more of a only a certain number of spots to fill these roles that these high profile portal guys are going to say, well, no, I want to be there. I'll take $800,000 instead of 1.2 or 1.3, whatever I would get somewhere else, because I want to. Like, how much of that do you think could be at play?
I don't know, man. That speaks to kind of what I was talking about with the other schools that are also playing a fun style. It's like, it's nice that Pope has brought that. But we talked about like UConn also plays a really fun modern style. Also, Alabama does, Florida does. Like, there's a lot of these schools that are, and it's going to increasingly go that way. I think you're going to Dusty May at Michigan is going to start getting more and more talent. It's an attractive way to play. Are there enough? It's going to come down to the market, man. I mean, that's what it's going to come down to. I don't know. I don't know that we're quite to that point. If he starts winning titles, I think, or they start like going to Final Fours and something, and it's like, okay, this is so obvious. I think UConn's gotten to that point. I think that they have leverage in that way right now. But Pope, I think, still is kind of in the process of proving that, because that's a hell of a thing. I mean, we saw the Caleb Wilson situation. I mean, like, it's just so the money thing just overrides it. It's almost like when you offer on a house, it's kind of like there's the couple that you really like and they're smiling and they got a baby and you're like, I like them, but the jerk up the street offered me more money and I'm going with the money. Like I just think that I think that's just going to continue to be a factor until what level of success would it take for him to like override the money part of it, right?
And again, I think it's all moot until you win a postseason game. Like, there's so much of it riding on, hey, things are going really well. If they right the ship with the injury stuff and they are able to get a second weekend, I think would even just feed families in so many different ways. But just so much. But if things do go according to plan as things stand right now with the injuries and getting guys back, if you can get the role guys to fit a new role when Lamont and Jackson come back, and that help leads to, like, all of it is kind of a if to put the puzzle pieces together. But it is a fascinating debate that I don't think we're going to be able to really have until April, second week of April. You got one person says, I like what Kyle brings to this show. Hope to see him on more. Yeah, me too, buddy. Like,
thanks, man. It's interesting. I cut you off. I'm sorry. I have one more comment on the talent thing. It's interesting that you see. Well, Clyde, I'm going to talk politics now. Just for that, I never talk politics. No. No, it's interesting. I think in every kind of regime, you see this transition of trying to work out. I think the football program saw this, that they had some success and then they start thinking like, okay, now we kind of got some more access to some better, skill position players and things like that. And you bring them in. Obviously, you're not getting the creme de la creme like the Bamas or the whoever's, and you see that's a risk you take, because those players come in with different expectations, and managing those things is a separate skill set that Calipari, for all of the things that we got frustrated about, he was very good at it. Sometimes he was a little too beholden to those guys and a little too, and he played that, the NBA.
Gotta love him.
They got to the point where the school was serving the NBA more than the NBA was serving the school. People were just like, we don't want to hear about the pros anymore. We want to win some games. And I think that it's going to be an interesting transition for Pope to sort of like, can he get those guys in? Are they going to, because the guys that he got, they had something to gain by hitching themselves to the Kentucky brand. When you're talking about a Nate Ament, let's be honest, if Nate Ament went to, I don't know, UC Santa Barbara, he's going to be a lottery pick next year. So in some extent, it makes me laugh. To some extent, it makes me laugh whenever people are just like, Cal developed Anthony Davis. The hell he did, guys. I mean, we were lucky that he came
You
here.
could coach Anthony Davis.
It's kind of like in 8 months, some guys are what they are. Some guys get better, but I just, I don't know. That's going to be an interesting thing to watch him navigate. He's so likable and positive. I don't expect it to go poorly, but it's just managing those. He didn't have those types of guys at BYU. Alvin Brooks has managed those guys. Like they have some experience with it, but I'm going to be fascinated to watch it.
Wanted to get your thought real quickly before I do another ad read on Kerr. That's one that didn't get the full Kerr Kriisa experience I think Mark Pope was looking for. He has talked openly about this medical red shirt. Depending on who you talk to, could go a couple different directions. What would you do with Kerr Kriisa, knowing what this team needs as we talk roster construction and the defense and some of the other, very important things to navigate?
It's tough, man, because it's like before Kerr came here, I was not. I mean, he wasn't my favorite player. I mean, I watched him. At times. I was like, it was a little maddening. But once he came here, I'm like, of course, you get to see somebody a little more frequently. You see their personality. It's fun the way,
you developed a soft spot for him that it's like a flawed child. You're like, Wish he wouldn't do that, but what can you say?
Yeah,
It's
he's
little
clapping and
buddy.
stomping and yelling and getting under people's skin, and there's value for that, things like that. But in terms of just if I'm just being brutal basketball, looking at this, like if I were like Danny Ainge and I would trade my firstborn away for the correct basketball roster, there you go. That didn't mean for that one to be for you, but there you go. I mean, Kerr is going to be dissonant with Travis and some of these other guys. And I think when you have just meaning like I just think they're going to have too much overlap of the same types of problems. So for me, how do you have that conversation though, man? I mean, that's kind of it's easy for me from a distance to be like they should move on, whatever it is. I would hate for that to happen. I'm sure that's going to suck. I just don't know. It just doesn't seem like a very popey thing to do. Do you see him doing that, Jack? Because I don't. I mean,
Forcing somebody out?
Yeah, but also
is that the you're insinuating?
Yeah. Well, also, the other flip side of it is, like I was telling you, I had some conversations with people out. There's the public-facing Pope, and there's the Pope who is spinning the plates, the million plates of coaching at UK and managing all the relationships, and he's very positive. And then you hear about the competitive Pope behind the scenes. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe I'm incorrect, but it seems like that'd be a really hard conversation to have.
And I think being Kerr makes it more difficult because he has been kind of that, like, I've been recruiting this guy for 35 years and like he's my golden goose. I've wanted him for so long and I finally got my hands on him and I only get him for 9 games or whatever, ended up being 7. And it's kind of that thing to unite, like, hey, I know his values, but I also know his flaws. I also know what he's going to cost and what other people would be willing to pay for him and the roles they'll be offering him and what we're trying to do to win basketball games. Like it is kind of a cutthroat deal where Kerr Kriisa can help you win games, but there are other guys that don't have the very glaring flaws and cons to their games that Kerr does that you might get for the same value or even cheaper. And I do know that he would be a wanted commodity once again if he were to re-enter the portal again. He's on his 3rd school in college. Like this level has gone not to the highest bidder, but like he's been pretty flirtatious in this process and comfortable bouncing around with when the opportunity has called. So both sides have interesting decisions to make about what they're going to prioritize. And I wouldn't be shocked if like Pope just said, man, I love you, buddy, but like, we'll give you fair money, but don't expect the role, and have somebody else in the portal potentially lure him in and say, well, we'll give you that a little bit more money, but also a starting role. When you're in Kerr Kriisa's shoes, like I think that there is kind of a mercenary part to him where he'd say, love you, Pope. Always appreciate these 8 months, but and then
he's back as an assistant at some point or something. I don't know. It's kind
not
of
going to be it's not like there's any hate because of it, but it's just kind of it is what it is. I wish that you didn't get hurt and we got what we paid for with this 8-month experience, but it didn't work out. So let's,
we're not going to fire you, but we're not going to renegotiate kind of thing. That could be the route to take it. It's weird because he shot the ball so much. I see his positives, man. I mean, like he advances the ball really well. I think
I do. Yeah.
That's the main thing he does that I think that they've had a hard time replacing. And you'll see this team because like you see when Jackson's bringing the ball up, and you see this a lot in the absence. Jackson and Kobe, I'm going to use a word, and don't you guys run off the road when I say this, but they're very erect ball handlers.
Excuse me. I mean, it's after dark.
They're very upright. I'll just say they're very
upright and direct. It is 10 o'clock.
It is. Sorry, KSR after dark. Sorry, guys. But they're very upright. And like when you play that way, when you take contact, you kind of like tense up, So I just think Braden Smith, Eddie, actually is one that I've been curious about if they could go throw the bat. I'm glad that Eddie said that. That was one that was on my list. You whispering, Jack? That's one that I would be very curious. You want to talk about just usage out the yin yang. That guy
I'm just
pass it and shoot it.
When you're dad is on Twitter saying, I can't wait to whatever. I'm paraphrasing, so don't quote the paraphrasing. But when your dad is like openly talking on Twitter about hitting the portal, like it ain't a secret, but like you do see Purdue going on a 4-game losing streak and going, he does have one last hurrah. That could be a fit. Would you? We're talking way too openly and assuming for a guy who hasn't even hit the portal. But what would you think of that fit? Because he would probably be the best portal guard to enter. If would there even be a better possibility? I mean, this is Bob Cousy Award, type of player. Like, I don't think you could do better.
It would be stiff competition for him, and I mean, it goes back to kind of what we were talking about. And I don't know, is his family from Indiana? I was going to say that'd be close by, but
all of them,
yeah. I would say if you're looking at somebody that makes sense for them, I mean, Braden Smith has a very fast basketball mind. I would say he's played in an offense that has been, Matt Painter historically dump it in. We were talking about dump it in, pass it out. He probably would thrive in a different style. But if you look at the different types of ways that he can shoot it from three, he's dynamic. He can hit it in a lot of different ways. I like guys that can get on and off the ball quickly. The ball doesn't stick with them. And Braden Smith, I think it would be very hard to top him in the portal. The other problem is just like, I think they need somebody a little more disruptive and to wall up at the point of attack defensively. So I don't think you could stop at Braden Smith. What was the name that showed up on the screen? I missed it. It was
Wolf was the other one, but
okay.
I think he's more of he'll go pro, right?
I love my Kentucky fans. I was going to say Kentucky's would not be competing against Michigan or Duke. They're going to be competing against like the Lakers and the Mavericks for Danny Wolf. He's a pro, guys. He's
right.
Like, come on, man. Like, I wish, but that ain't gonna happen.
Why is Danny Wolf? Why is he a pro, but Amari Williams isn't?
Well, don't erase what I said. I did say.
I'm not saying you. I'm saying the way Wolf is discussed in just such a loving, like, oh my gosh, he's the sensation of this college basketball cycle. Like, I feel like Amari is so undervalued in the national landscape. Like I just feel like he is so much better than the national publications are giving him credit for, and the draft publications.
Yeah, I think it's just sort of, you use the simplest way to look at it is just you use first round picks for legitimate bets. You want to make a wager and an investment, a literal monetary investment in a guy, and it's a little bit more of a risk to do that with Amari with first round money. Maybe, I mean, like I said, I do think he'll get a chance to get like a look in the second round, which give him a chance to make a roster. But Wolf just has more of an obvious skill set translation, I think, to the NBA. Like, he projects as like a stretch four. He's somebody that can space the floor. We've seen that did you see the list that came out the other day where they were talking about like players who can hit the roll man and pick and roll? And Danny Wolf,
I didn't see the list.
Yeah. Danny Wolf was like the big kid sticking out with all the other little short guys. Like, he just sticks out. He's got great feel. He can pass the ball. If you haven't watched him, I mean, guys, he's really, really skilled basketball player. Yeah.
I'm a big fan. I'm also a big fan of Circa Sports Kentucky. The best time of the year is here, and the best app to bet college basketball is Circa Sports Kentucky. It's sports betting the way it should be, with high and transparent betting limits, lowest holds, and exceptional customer service. It doesn't matter when they take the court, whether it's spreads, props, futures, or in-game. Circa Sports is the best, the place to bet college basketball fun and bet like a pro from anywhere, anytime. Download your new bookie today at circasports.com. Must be 18 or older for Kentucky Problem Gambling Services. Call or text 1-800-426-2537. Are there any other fascinating potential portal names that you think could be a potential good fit should they decide to throw their name, or like even like just a international route? Any outside of the box names who could be on a Kentucky roster next year that you think would be interesting?
We talked a little bit about what's going to be if they do end up having a Garrison thing. Like, another thing that we didn't talk about is that Moreno could be better than Brandon next year.
Do you think so? What are your thoughts on we can talk about all of the high school kids, but just Moreno specifically?
Yeah, man. I have NBA people talk to me about Moreno.
Really?
Yeah, they know about these guys, dude. It's hilarious. Like, I mean, Moreno has, I think his feel is higher than Brandon. Yeah, Josh Hubbard, I've heard people talk about that. I don't know. I still think you kind of run into it. Hubbard, what this team lacks this year is, we've talked about they're going to be in a position where they can upgrade some things, but they're going to have a hard time replacing. Like, it's going to be hard to find a guy who is like a hub on offense and an anchor on defense. That's just really difficult to find. Usually it's one or the other. If you go and look at guys who have good offensive numbers, it's like, okay, he's a screen door or whatever it is. So they're going to have to kind of pick probably one or the other, because they are going to have more ball skills on next year's team, guys that can dribble and create their own. I mean, Jasper Caden is a very creative player. I think that somebody that I think is interesting that they could take a look at is Mason Falslev at Utah State. Is a guy who is like 6'3", 6'4", good defensive hands, and can really shoot the ball. Abdi Bashir, I'm pretty sure his brother just committed to Auburn, so I wouldn't be shocked if they end up with both of those guys, but he screams Auburn to me too. Just an absolute erratic wild man from three and can just shoot the piss out of it. And then JT Toppin, I've heard people talk about. There's another dude I would recommend people go check out who's pretty athletic. Like, I think he'd be in the Ansley spot, is Andrew Holyfield for Lamar, who is very big and long and springy.
Some connections there.
Yeah. So check that one out. That'd be in the Ansley, kind of down the bench spot. But the other one that we were talking about is Luigi Swigo, the Italian kid, who is just absolutely gigantic. And if you were going to bet on somebody who offensive stuff is a little more raw, his ball can imagine Z, but a lot less steady with the ball, which is kind of terrifying to think about.
Z's worst qualities, that.
Yeah. Imagine Z's worst qualities, but worse. Yeah, he's very, very big. And I think that his body has improved a lot in the last year. I think he could be a defensive anchor for them. I don't know if they're going to be able to get somebody like him. I think they're going to have to you agree or disagree with this. I think they're going to have to lean towards the defensive tools more than the offensive tools, just because I don't know that there's a direct replacement for Amari out there.
And it's so hard until you see who is in the portal. Like, there might be a guy who we're not expecting to jump in or pull his name out of the draft or not explore the draft at all. You're like, oh, like that, there it is. But it is just such a unique spot where Amari was the perfect fit for Mark Pope at the perfect time, where you do just kind of wonder, and like, is there, like we saw Hannes Steinbach, a German player, pop up. How much, do you look European? Like, do you go the international route? Because it does kind of feel like that would be right up Pope's alley. To find what we're kind of looking with the positional versatility and the playmaking and kind of what he is looking for at the big spot. I don't know. It's tough problem to have.
The big man at San Diego State. Yeah. I mean, he is super, super, super raw. I'm not so sure his name is, I have so many basketball names in my head. My recall on that one is slow, but I'm going to lean into the stereotyping here, so forgive me for doing this, but I think it's way more likely that you get the offensive things that you're looking for out of the European thing, because I just don't. I mean, on average, how many just defensive anchors do you really find other than the Wembanyamas and the Giannis's of the world? And those guys aren't going to college. So I just think that I'm a little skeptical that they're going to be able to find the defensive stuff other than a Swigo, somebody who's just so big that he's like a deterrent in the middle. So I think you're going to have to find that on the college route. There are some guys, like you mentioned, that have the offensive tools that would look great in Kentucky's system. But for the defense, I would go transfer over here.
And it is just it is tough when Pope very handpicked Lamont Butler to fill a very specific defensive role. He handpicked Otega to be, not at the Lamont level, but still being, guarding 94 feet type of defender. And then Amari, 3-time CAA Defensive Player of the Year, like very specific. So I do think he's going to go all defense at a couple of positions. And that's where, like, you talk about a Braden Smith, should he enter the portal or like whatever. Would you pass on somebody who is as talented as that for defense, knowing Jasper and I was talking to another buddy of mine talking about just the total weight. I think if you were to add Braden Smith, it's like 400, it's like 535 total pounds between him, Jasper Johnson, and Caden Lewis. And it's just like, all right, at some point we do have to push your chips in on defense, but how could you pass up a talent like that? I don't know. I'm glad I'm not the one making those decisions.
There are different kind of silos of defense, right? I mean, there are different compartments, and you can get a guy who's maybe more of a steal, like a Rajon Rondo in college was a very much a steal creator.
And Braden does average 2.3 steals a game. Like he does create steals, just he's 6 foot, 175 pounds.
Yeah, I mean he's 3.9% steal percentage, which is 96th percentile, so super high. I mean his like advanced stats are off the charts. I mean he had almost 25% usage, and I say assist to usage a lot. It basically just kind of is a measurement of what your slugging percentage is for making the correct decision. And his is extremely high, 1.81, which is 98th percentile. So this is a guy who can pass it and shoot it, and he has great hands. He's not going to be necessarily that cornerback kind of like secondary body that gets up under you and stops. Like Otega is more of that body type. I think you probably need one more person like that. Maybe that's somebody that is also kind of a wing tweener that can guard point guards. But yeah, if you get a chance to get Braden, I think that he would be a nice sort of like glue between a Caden and Jasper, and you could put them on the floor together and then maybe figure out some other things. Offensively, they're going to be very fun next year if they end up getting a guy like that.
What are your expectations for a Caden and Jasper next season?
Jasper, you hear mixed things about people being like, well, they're curious about seeing how he's going to respond to the quick on to off ball stuff. I've heard some people talk about that it's going to be interesting to see how he grows in that setting. And I mean, shooting the ball wise, we talked about like audaciousness, cojones. I mean, he's way up there, man. He likes to shoot it, so that's going to be great. Caden, I think people are really going to like because he's a big time creative risk taker in terms of like playmaking. That's going to be very fun when he gets it going. I think people are going to have a fun time watching him. I don't totally understand why Caden was ranked where he was, and the star rating, I guess, is sort of the other part. Those two things go together. But because if you look at who really, really wanted a Caden badly, I think that's all you need to know. I mean, the fact that Hurley and Shire both really, really wanted a Caden Lewis, I think it was a big win. And for all this talking about that he hasn't landed a big guy, we may look back and be like,
he did.
We'll see.
And Jasper on all three of them. Like I do think that it really is all just about like what the number is next to their name, because I do really like the fits in he made decisions like going after a Caden and Jasper versus a Braylon Mullins, or Malachi Moreno versus an Eric Reeby. Like they made gut calls where he could have gone other directions and made the decision to push their chips in. So like I do think that there was an evaluation hunch and call for Pope and his staff to say like, no, I'm betting big on a Caden Lewis. I'm betting big on Malachi. So there is something to be said about that.
You know this better than me. I mean, the recruiting stuff. I mean, it was a real, like they thought Reeby was really on the board, like a legitimate option.
They could have gotten either of them. It was we are going to take whoever commits for, and it might have just been we're tired of waiting on Malachi, so we're going to, press and push harder for an Eric Reeby to come, knowing that we really want Malachi and just want him on board right now to help recruit. So it could kind of go both ways, but there is a very real scenario where Kentucky could have signed both Eric Reeby and Braylon Mullins, and that been the class. And they made the decision to pivot and go with the guys that they brought in. So that was a call. That was not we're feeling that Eric Reeby is going another direction, so we're going to go with Malachi, or whatever the case is. They made the gut decision to go with the guys that they signed, and that takes some cojones, but I think they deserve credit for it.
Yeah, I one thing I do trust this staff, and I would say this to people, not that anybody needs my opinion on this or my validation or whatever it is that I do trust the evaluation of this staff a lot, because I think that in this portal era, it's going to be the thing that causes people to sink or swim. Like the ability to put rosters together quickly on the fly, it's gonna separate. And I think you've already kind of seen that. I think Chris Beard, I think, is somebody that deserves a lot of credit for quickly assembling. Or TJ Otzelberger that might end up being Indiana's coach. I mean, there's a lot of guys that the smart coaches are getting a chance, I think, to rise to the top because of this in this like post kind of one and done dominant era. And I think that Pope's level of obsessive preparation at times has worried me about him. Like I've told you, like to the point where Pope is so consumed with basketball to the point where I'm judging him by normal person standards and seeing him and being like, are you okay? But then I just, for the people listening to this, I sent this article and I'll tweet it out. But I sent to Jack this article that I found. I was looking for something else, and I was like, I wonder if there's a Pope article from the same era. And I just happened to look, and lo and behold, there was. And it's from when he was a freshman at Washington State. And some of the quotes in the article, he has not changed at all. Like this isn't something that he's just sort of somebody's latched on to the Patino personality and tried to take it to another level. But he was just talking about laying in bed at night and just frantically saying like, I hate basketball, or just his energy is just nuclear. So it's I'm excited about it. I think that as long as he didn't outthink himself, with some of the like analytic stuff about the resting Amari and things like that, I'm curious to see how his gut sort of evolves at Kentucky.
We're just totally off topic here. But when we're down in Tuscaloosa, I was with Ben Roberts and some of the other, beat guys and talking about newspaper clippings. And Ben Roberts showed me an old byline of Jerry Tipton, go figure. And the headline was like, Mark Pope, still a virgin, blah 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 blah, from his time from his time in college. And it was a real life. I tried to just on the fly pulling it up right now, but if one of our listeners can find that actual article for me, but I read it and saw it with my own two eyes. Jerry Tipton had a headline that it referenced Mark Pope's virginity while he was at Kentucky. So
he was focused. Okay, he was very focused. I get the sense the only thing from the BYU stuff that I just scientifically was just very fascinating to talk to those people out there about how he has evolved. Because in the beginning he was like trying to be Rick Pitino basically and trying to hold BYU to a standard that I think they were like. They're not like us. They were, Pope came in there and was trying to hold them to a standard where Kentucky fans are just like, hell yeah, this is the standard. What are you talking about? Let's go. They're just like chewing their teeth down to nubs. BYU people were like, what? What are you like? What? Like, why are you so intense? But
chill, bro.
But he's so consumed with winning and hates losing so much that apparently from the impression I got from them was like they would look at him and be like, dude, it's all right. Like Pope wants to win so badly and he hates losing. Like as much as we hate it, like he hates it more. Like so don't worry about him like sitting up nonchalant to the point where I'm just kind of like I hope he can find a little bit of balance and doesn't go crazy. But
is that sustainable? Like I do want to like from a knowing how consuming it is being at the University of Kentucky, like how long can you last just being 195% at all times? Like how long can that go on?
Dude, I don't know. Because this place, I always say this, you have to attack this job. You cannot let it attack you. And Pope, I don't think this job will ever attack him. Like I think because he just is a constant energy, mental energy. He just is trying to iterate and make things better at all times. So I don't know, man. This job chews people up. So you look at him and you're like, it's what he did, what he has done his whole life has gotten him to this point. And you just kind of, as long as it doesn't consume him, and I think the only way is just to win. Like if things start to slide and he has some kind of middling seasons, I could see the stress eating him alive. But what do I know? He's gotten to this point with this motor. Jack, who in the world plays in the NBA and maintains a regular NBA schedule and takes med classes at Columbia, at Marquette? Who does that?
A
Like,
psychopath.
so that just speaks to what we're talking about. He's a different type of person. He's different than me, man. Like I didn't have that energy.
Dude, and like I just feel dumb talking to him. Like when you sit down and just hear him out and just what, and you just kind of like nod and like, yeah, I definitely know what you're saying right now. Like we're totally on the same page. And it's just like, dude, it fascinates. He is a really fascinating dude that it's so easy to root for him. Like it's one of those deals where it's just like I want him to succeed here because the idea of what a successful Mark Pope in Kentucky, like it really is just like, okay, he's brilliant, he cares, he has the passion and energy, and he hits all the talking points that the fan base genuinely cares about. Like he checks so many boxes where you're just like, man, I don't see a scenario where it fails, but I also just like I'm rooting for him as a person so bad because it does feel like he has everything that this fan base has wanted in a head coach forever.
Mm-hmm.
And you just that almost comes in with when they lose a tough game, where like that almost creeps in more so than like the actual what happened in the game. You're just like, damn, I really feel for Pope that he's having to deal with this, because you root for the guy personally because he is so good. He does have so many qualities that you just every Kentucky fan dreamed of to fill this role.
Yeah, and just like a total, I've said this online, not that anybody would even know this, but I don't want to assume anything, but I've said this, that he is so different than Cal also, in that, Cal would get offended by observers and onlookers trying to participate in the basketball discussion. And for whatever reason, you can call that whatever you would like, but he didn't want, homie didn't play that. And Pope is so unthreatened by it. He's like, sure, man, you want to come in here and have this conversation? I'm going to drown you in this conversation. So
he forces you to be smart. Like he forces you to be engaged in an intellectual conversation. He doesn't dumb things down. Mm-hmm. He expects you to rise to his standard. And I think that's cool.
And there's still things that he's not, he is saying a lot more. He's obviously not saying everything. And he's also playing a lot of different psychological kind of things because he really believes in that. He believes in the psychology of the team, and he's like a big pipe organ. He's turning the things. And a lot of coaches do that. But Pope is a big believer in that. And I don't know, man. Yeah, I just hope it doesn't burn him out, but we'll see.
There was one comment that I wanted you to see. Oh, from my boy Donnie. Twice a month. Can you sign up for that twice a month?
Thank you, Donnie Clemens. I appreciate that. That's a great name. Donnie Clemens. A lot of music to that name. Yeah, we'll see. I'd love to come back. Yeah. I talk on One Shining Podcast, a little plug. I go in there once a month with Tate. We talk some Kentucky, but they don't want to, they just want to hear a little Kentucky. They're just like, get in the weeds.
Just sprinkle.
They're like, shut up and talk about other teams. I'm just like, dude, the one thing about me, as much basketball as I watch, my rituals are the things that are still precious to me. Like, I want to hear the pregame show. I want to watch the game, and I want to sit back and watch another game and listen to the postgame show. I have to do those things. So I don't think I'm ever going to change in that way.
I hope Monticello Bank doesn't change their ways. Enjoy the home court advantage with Monticello Bank's HELOC special and use the equity you've built in with your home to finance special home projects and improvements. Score big with a fantastic introductory rate and attractive closing costs. With 20 locations in 14 counties across Kentucky, we're just around the corner, so hurry in and speak with one of our mortgage lenders about this limited time offer today. Find us on the web at mbcbank.com. Monticello Bank, where people matter, member FDIC. Equal housing lender. Kyle, we'll start wrapping up here. Just like postseason expectations, and assuming you get Jackson and Lamont back again, the news from Mark Pope tonight was very, very positive, and it's exactly what we wanted to hear at this stage with 4 games left in the regular season. But assuming you get the guys that you need back in a timely manner, you can go into the SEC tournament full strength. They stay healthy, and then you go into the postseason. How are you viewing this? Like, do you think that this Kentucky team is a genuine Final Four contender? What would be a successful March Madness run in your eyes, given what we've seen in recent memory, given what kind of he has shown at his best? Pope has shown at his best. This team has shown at its best throughout the season. What should fans be expecting in these next couple of weeks?
I mean, just for the vibes. I mean, just purely. Let's just talk vibes for a second.
I love vibes, man. I love vibes.
Let's talk vibes. I think second weekend, man. They just need. I think this fan base will be fine with second weekend. I think it just as long as. But the thing that I think benefits them is like we talked about. This team, he built a team that fits together. Not only do they fit together, but it is a cumulatively smart group. He curated and picked bright kids. Some of these guys are, Carr, geez Louise. I mean, he's he's got back problems. He's not quite Carr can rent a car almost. He's almost 25, very close to his prime. But
did you come up with that on the spot? I know you had that in your arsenal.
That one popped in the brain there.
I don't know, man. That feels carefully curated. Waiting like a joke going up to a open mic night. Like, oh man, I have this one in my arsenal.
I didn't have that one in the notebook.
My back pocket. Yeah.
I think something that will benefit them though is the ability for your team to work on your feet and quickly take. I'm going to pull a Popeism here. I suggested to Ben Roberts he do a weekly segment called Pope Paris, where he just like does Pope quotes. That's free. Somebody can have that.
If he's not going to claim it, I would.
No, I think this team and this staff think really well on their feet. I think whenever they have then they're going to be hard to adjust to. I think like short-term preparation for this team is going to be really difficult. Like I like if you're turning around and trying to get ready for the way that they play, it's going to be hard if they're at full strength. But I also think that this team is going to be. We talked about situational curveballs like the 1-3-1 or whatever it is. I have a lot of confidence in. I didn't have confidence in the way that Cal, especially post Robic, I didn't have a lot of confidence in his. Like he didn't believe in that. He didn't want to adjust on his feet and think on the fly like that because he didn't want the kids. He wanted the kids to just play. That's a legitimate philosophy that brought a lot of success to the school. But I think that Pope's. That's gonna be an advantage that they have for all the other kind of issues they have athletic wise and everything like that. So second weekend they can beat anybody, man. They could, but they also if they get up against like a rugged, like I'm just thinking like a San Diego State type rugged team that maybe doesn't have a lot of talent, but they have a lot of athletes and they can grind you. They could also lose in the first weekend. That could happen. So I don't know. I'm thinking they'll probably get to the second weekend, but if a path opens up, this team could go. Absolutely, they could seize what's there. Yeah.
And so much is made about Nashville, the SEC tournament, how this is going to be that's going to be harder than Jay Billis. This is going to be the harder than the NCAA tournament. Winning the SEC championship is going to be more valuable than winning the NCAA tournament. I disagree because I think though the teams, the Auburns, the Alabamas, they're going to be, less focused on winning that than pushing their chips in on March and making sure that they're ready for a sustained, month-long run. Am I crazy for thinking that this feels like a team of destiny? Mark Pope leads Kentucky to an SEC championship against all odds, finally getting his guys back. They, whatever, it's a Wednesday or Thursday start, whatever, that they just have what it takes to be more emotionally invested in Nashville, lead them to an SEC championship. And then at that point, like, is it all like, I think all you need is a second weekend. If you get to, if you tell me that they win the SEC championship in the hardest SEC tournament of all time, and then make it to the second weekend, like, I think that is dream scenario for this team.
Yeah, man. Do you agree? Yeah. I think that people would be extremely happy with that. But like you said, the SEC, it's the double whammy. You don't get the turnaround of people being unfamiliar with your style. You got a lot of familiarity. You got a lot more talent. You're banged up. I mean, I'm not so sure if it would be amazing if they won the SEC tournament. It would be an accomplishment.
But is there? Yeah. Do you think there's an investment with the other teams at the top of the juggernauts?
Does it mean more to Kentucky than it would to them? That's
what I'm saying. Like, do you think that there's an investment for Auburn to go win the SEC championship? I personally don't think so. Like, probably is there an investment for Nate Oates to coach his team to an SEC championship? I don't think he cares. Like, I think he cares everything is on going back to a Final Four for Nate Oates. I don't think he gives a damn about winning an SEC championship. Maybe like a Todd Golden, like a Florida could be that could be interesting. But like if that's the top three, Tennessee, whatever. I mean, we'll see. But like, I feel like Kentucky just kind of has that like, hey, this means everything to Kentucky. They're going to be pushing all their chips in on this run, while everybody else has its eyes on the following weekend and beyond.
I think the
I don't
fact
know.
that they have a legitimate chance to make a run in the tournament, if things like I said, if a path, so you're not punting on the tournament, but I do think that for the vibes, like we said, circling back, I mean, like an SEC tournament win, it's the toughest league in America, arguably the toughest league ever. So I mean, it would mean a lot. But I think for Pope, in terms of this, his like bullet point legacy type stuff, like I think it would be a really cool thing for the fans, what it means for like players and the brand spinning forward and things like that. I mean, I'm sure they would get a lot of good positive PR for in the news cycle for winning the SEC tournament. But I don't know. I'm still I'm March. I'm NCAA tournament. It'd be awesome to win the SEC, but I really would like to see them just kind of. But I don't know. I don't know if that's gonna. I don't know if how they're gonna play it. If they're gonna like try to hold guys out of the SEC tournament. You probably are more tapped into this than I am. I don't know, man. I don't know.
I think they will do whatever it takes to win that event. I think Pope called his shot at his introductory press conference very specifically for a reason. Like I think that was a very intentional. I'm tired of he's heard the fan base, and fans have been very obvious about it, forthcoming about their frustrations with, hey, we're using up vacation days and thousands upon thousands of dollars of our hard-earned life savings to go to the SEC tournament and only to leave the following day, and feeling that disconnect with the fan base. I think that was very important, and I don't know, it just kind of feels like that's going to be the event that we really push all of our chips in on, and it's they kind of feel like a team of destiny in that way. And then at that point, whatever happens in the NCAA tournament, it is. And I hope that the other teams ahead of Kentucky have the same feeling that you do, where it's like, oh, my focus is on NCAA tournament, like nothing else matters.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens in Nashville, but I hope that the Auburns and Alabamas have the same mindset that you do, because I feel like this would be really, really big for the fan base.
I think in terms for rhythm, I think it's important for Kentucky. They need to get into a rhythm, and for me, I think that's the most important thing. It's not necessarily an either or thing. Like I think it really behooves them to try to get a rhythm for the tournament, so that they're not getting back, because they've had so many guys kind of assume different roles during these absences, that I do think that it's important on that front. They're going to try to win everything that's in front of them. So I don't know if there is a prioritization of what they want to do. Like I think they're just going to go balls to the wall, because that's a team takes on the personality of their coach. And Jack, as we just talked about for 10, 15 minutes, there ain't no other option with Mark Pope. He's gonna go.
Oklahoma is the biggest game on the schedule of their lives. It has nothing to do with Nashville. This is the biggest game of our lives.
Exactly.
Kyle, man, this has been an absolute blast. Any last? You don't get this opportunity often. Do you have any last second? Like, hey, I've had something that I wanted to get off my chest with Kentucky basketball that I just haven't been able to with my own platform. I want you to use it in just verbal diarrhea. I'd love to hear it.
Really quickly, people, and I'm gonna have to go do some other things here, but quickly, I've just heard a lot of people say this, wondering why we don't shoot more threes. You got to create more threes. Okay, that's the problem. Like if they had more guys that could create some advantage, I think that would be the thing. It's just, if you watch the way these guys are getting guarded off ball, they're not dribble shooters. Jackson and Kobe, both elite catch and shoot players, both elite handoff shooters. I think that is the reason why that number is low. You're not seeing guys draw advantage. You see some with Carr in the post. He can get in there and score a little bit and pass out. Amari a little bit. But, among those two guys that are taking the most shots, I think that's why they're not taking it. And they don't generate a ton of turnovers, which is another place where you get more threes. So that's why, in my opinion. There you go.
Hey, I love it. What a way to put a bow on this thing. Kyle, man, you're the best. You're brilliant, and you're a savant, and we appreciate you.
This is a running bit between us, by the way. He just says savant until I blush and want to disappear. So yeah,
you're going to hear it for the rest of our friendship. So I hope you're prepared for it. Kyle, where can fans find your work, buddy?
Well, you can find it on theringer.com if you like to read. You can find it on the Ringer's YouTube channel if you like to watch, and you can find it on the Ringer's podcast feed, preferably on Spotify because they own us. So send us that money. And if you want to listen to me with your ears, and those are the three. Kyle Mann on Twitter.
You can. I'd love to. Anything you do, I love. And your wife does the
artwork.
cartoons that you did. The art, it's not like perfect. It's like your analysis and her artwork is like just perfect. They belong. It's like, oh, you guys should be married. Like, you know, it's funny. It's funny how life works that way. You can find me on Twitter at Jack Pilgrim KSR. Go subscribe to KSR Plus. Make sure you're subscribed right here. Thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate each and every one of you. We'll see you next time. Go Cats.